presentation of the Women's Football Alliance.
This is it. We have reached the end of the season and made it to the national championships on the road to Canton. Welcome to the Road to Canton. I'm your host, Brian Sweeney, the voice of the Women's Football Alliance Pro Division National Championship game. With me, as always, is Alex Wested. And Alex, when this season started, there were 56 teams across 3 divisions, all trying to get to one goal, Canton, Ohio. We have made it, and it is National Championship weekend. 6 teams remaining. Let's look at the National Championship matchups. In the Division III National Championship, the 7-1 Cincinnati Cougars look to win a championship for the National Conference when they play the 7-1 New Mexico Bonitas. After missing the playoffs last season, the Cougars are looking to win it all, and for the Bonitas, this is their second straight trip to the big game. This year, they are looking for a better result than last season's loss to West Palm Beach. Alex, both of these teams have a good reason to win. However, even though they're playing in the championship, New Mexico is not ranked as one of the top 2 teams of Division III. Which team wins and moves up to Division II next season?
Well, I think that when you look at this matchup, Brian, there's a lot of interesting questions, and we've talked about it in the postseason versions of Road to Canton here, where there's a lot of things that in terms of, WFA Pro, you can compare opponents a little more easily. Division II, you can do the same. We'll do that next segment coming up with Nebraska and West Palm Beach. But for Division III, the comparisons stop. And you have to go kind of multiple levels to find that comparable opponent. Obviously, a team in New Mexico and a team in Cincinnati do not play each other. They do not have the ability to play each other right now, but they will in Canton, Ohio, coming up on Friday. I think the big storyline here is the offenses. And I think that when you look at these 2 teams, you have the number 1 offense in Cincinnati, the number 2 offense in Division III in New Mexico, and both of these teams have the ability to score a lot of points. What makes this matchup different and what makes this matchup interesting to me, Brian, is that we don't know necessarily what exactly is the Cincinnati defense going to do. We know what their point margin is, but there's a lot of things, points for, points against. There's in a 6-game regular season schedule, there's not really enough context to that without seeing them head-to-head against somebody that's a comparable opponent, and that's what we have here in Cincinnati. Cincinnati did not report their defensive stats. We don't know how many points per game. Well, we know how many points per game they gave up. We don't know how many yards per game they gave up, and so there's a lot of questions about Cincinnati. I think where New Mexico has one advantage here, they've been here before. Last year's game when they took on West Palm Beach, I think on last year's Road to Canton, I was talking about how close this matchup was going to be. On paper, it looked fine, but what was on paper did not translate to the baking hot turf at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, Ohio. And so my big question looking at this one again is, what is the opportunity for New Mexico to show that they've learned from their trip to Canton, Ohio last season, where they got throttled by West Palm Beach in that Division III game? Since I've been doing games at the Division III level, we've seen that there's a significant difference between teams in each conference, where these Division III championship games, more times than not, are blowouts because they don't have a comparable and they don't have that necessarily pound for pound look at each other that we see at Division II and at the WFA Pro level. And so I think that based on the experience, I think New Mexico picks up the win here. But again, if this becomes a shootout, we know what New Mexico's defense can do. On paper, we do not know what Cincinnati's defense can do, especially with an offense of this caliber. I like New Mexico here, but if it gets into a shootout, give me Cincinnati, because we don't know enough about the Cougars to be able to make a statement one way or the other.
Now let's look at the Division II National Championship. After winning a Division III championship in 2023, the 7-1 West Palm Beach Coyotes of the National Conference look to be the next WFA team to win a Division II championship in their first season after being promoted. Standing in their way is the 7-1 Nebraska Pride. Alex, for both of these teams, their only loss in the regular season was to Pro Division teams. Which of these teams takes home the championships and joins that pro level in 2025?
Well, I think when you look at the Pro Division teams that they lost to this year, Brian, you look at West Palm Beach having lost to Tampa, and you look at Nebraska having lost to Minnesota, I think that I don't know that those results are created equally, because Minnesota has played Nebraska each of the last 2 years when they were the Pride, and the year before that twice when they were the Nebraska Valkyries. And when you look at Tampa Bay taking on West Palm Beach in that matchup, there was a lot more that we talked about on the show, how that matchup was kind of a trap game for West Palm Beach because they had played them earlier in the season, they had beaten them earlier in the season, and there's a lot more into that you could take time to dive into. But I think that this is an opportunity here for both of these teams that they have been thriving on. I know on the American Conference side, I said throughout the course of Road to Canton that OKC was my prohibitive favorite. Well, credit the Nebraska Pride. Their focus has always been that offense. And we've seen it since they played Minnesota, where their offense and particularly their passing game, even at Division III and at Division II, their passing game has always been at a Pro Division level because they've had great talent. You think about Nicole Skolnick as a quarterback for Nebraska. You think about the receiving threat that they've had, including most specifically that I can think of, Mika Richards, who was the All-American for them as the Valkyries 2 seasons ago in Canton, Ohio. The more important thing for Nebraska is they've done this success this year without Essence Bell, where Essence Bell played a couple of games, a two-way player, run the ball, big physical back, but also a great linebacker. We saw her as well in her time with the Iowa Phoenix of Division III, and they've done all this without her. She has been, at least in the time that we've seen, she's been the star on both sides of the ball for the Nebraska Pride. They've done that without her. And now they have an opportunity to really make a statement here where, you talk about teams at Division II and III playing those Pro Division teams and just wondering what impact does that have? Well, this is that impact now, because you can see a Nebraska Pride team that has played Minnesota, that has played, Mile High, that has played these top division powerhouses, and now you get to see the dividends of that, because this is a team that apparently is championship caliber. I had the question of how would they perform against OKC in Oklahoma. Well, they did very darn well. They didn't score as much as we're used to seeing, but they defended very well, and that's something that we haven't seen from the Nebraska Pride in their time playing Minnesota in the past. So they made the adjustment, and they made a lot more moves to do it. You look at Nebraska, number 1 in offense this season and number 6 in defense. It's going to be a tough test for them in West Palm Beach. The Coyotes have the 5th best defense in Division II, but on the offensive side, again, they have the 3rd best offense, but that schedule was so much tougher. And so I think that when you look at that, West Palm Beach, again, looking to be another team that goes from Division III champions to Division II champions, and then moving up to the WFA Pro level. I've said that I like what I saw out of them last year in Canton, Ohio, and I like what I've seen out of them this season as well. My question again becomes, though, is how does that matchup happen? Where can the Nebraska defense stand up against this high-flying, talented, deep, prolific, whatever word you want to use to describe the West Palm Beach offense, can the Nebraska defense be the ones that withstand the storm? And so my question again becomes, if Nebraska can hold off those scoring drives for West Palm Beach, they have a chance, because their offense can do damage as well. But, the defense for West Palm Beach, it's pretty good. It's comparable, it's big, it's physical, it's in your face, and we'll see when we're on the call for that game on Friday. We're going to see what wins out. A defensive unit for Nebraska that has finally showed up and started to prove itself valuable in Division II, or will the prevailing wins of West Palm Beach move them up to WFA Pro and another team in a much needed Southeast Division?
The story has come full circle, and now we get to see how it all ends with Lois Cook and her segment, Low on the Go.
Oh, they're gonna have to pick it up. Oh, hello, dear. How you doing? Oh, I'm not supposed to talk to you. Oh, that's right, because I'm doing the broadcast, but it's the 4th quarter. Where you been? Well, let me catch you up now. Well, they can hear me, but I can't see them. I'm going to catch you up. It's the 4th quarter. You got 4 quarters. You make $1. And they got to make a score. They're down, and if they don't make this score, they're not going to win this game. Now, they didn't come all the way down here to not win this game. So that's what you call that right there. What you call that? Oh, that's about the 20-yard line. What time? Huh? Oh, that's right here. 23 yards to go. I know they're thinking of something good.
We only got a minute left. We're down by 1 score. Okay, we can do it. Hey, let me go. I got this. You can score. We can score. Yeah, no. We can score. High five. Yes. I got you. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Break. Yes! Get her on the goal! Go! Get her! Go! Go! I'm open! I'm open! I'm open! I'm open!
Well, that's not going to work.
I'm so sorry, guys. I thought I had it. We had
So
30
sorry.
seconds left. We got it.
Not on your phone.
No,
you
you
could
had
have
it.
didn't
You
have it.
could have been
Now.
more encouraged. You guys, Lo, it's okay. All you have to do is make sure you check your lashes, and you have to fix your crown, and then what you do is you do a little spin move, and you go da-da-da-da-da, and you go ah.
This isn't a beauty pageant. Focus.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna run you the ball, and you're gonna run it up the middle. You got that. You better. All right. Ready?
Okay.
Break. Break. Break.
The quarterback is going back. Oh, she gives the ball to the running back. Oh, my goodness. She's got to run. Get out of there. Oh, the defense is coming in, caving in on her. Well, she's... What? Oh, what's she doing? Oh, righty, rooty, tooty. She threw it in the air. Oh, would you look at that? She scored. She scored. Well, what you say there? What you say? What you say? They won the game. They won the game. Woo, they won the game. I knew they could do it.
And we'll be right back. Welcome back. Almost a third of the WFA has women as their head coaches, and over 50% of the team has a woman as the owner or general operator. I recently had a chance to talk to Lisa King, the commissioner of the WFA, on how important this is for the league and what to expect moving forward.
Lisa, thank you very much for taking the time out to talk with us today on Road to Canton. So I just want to start with, over the past few seasons, we've seen a growing number of women enter the league, not only as coaches in the WFA, but also in the ownership role. We already know that the players are important role models for the future generations of young women out there, but how important is it for these young girls to also see women in roles other than just players?
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see that in the league, and it's really just a progression, right? We're a young sport compared to everything else, and we've been able to play the game. The players have been able to play the game, and now they're at the generation where they actually can coach the game, and they've been around long enough to actually own teams as well. So the WFA has been around for 15 years, and that gives a lot of those players, more than 10 years experience. And some of the players have been playing for 15, 20 years. And they're at a place now where they have the experience and they have the knowledge to be able to coach the game. And then they can coach the next generation, and it comes full circle. So, it's been a minute since we've gotten to this place, and it's a slow process. But as we continue to build, we're going to continue to see more more women coaches, more women owners, and I love to see it, and that just shows that we're progressing as a sport and as a league, and everything's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Each year, the WFA highlights some of the best football players in the United States. My question to you is, will the time come where there's teams from Canada like we see in Major League Baseball and the NHL? So we'll have USA, WFA teams playing those teams across the border in Canada.
Well, I mean, we did have some Canada teams at one point. We had the Montreal Blitz. If you're referring to just franchise teams, the issue with the Canadian teams is, we did have the Blitz, and then at some point they changed the requirements to how to get over the border. And it went from, I believe, just a driver's license or a card that you could easily get to having a full passport now. That created major problems. And so one of the issues that we've had is being able to make sure that we have 400, 600, 800 players getting their passport just in case they play this Canadian team. The other issue we had is when we did bring in a Canadian team the last couple of years, we got hit with COVID, and it ended up being impossible to cross the border into Canada. So those were some challenges that we faced. We're still willing to continue that journey and bring a couple Canadian teams. I know we have some scrimmages with some Western Canadian teams, but the goal is to really make sure that we can, make it affordable for the players and make it happen. But it's always been a goal, and if we can make it happen, then that's definitely what we want to do.
So Canton, Ohio has been a major part of the WFA now for the past 4 seasons, basically since the end of COVID. And a lot, not only that, but there's been big continuous growth and not only streaming of the WFA games, but also year after year, we see the numbers on ESPN2 continue to grow in viewership. What can we look forward to in the next few years for the WFA?
Well, I mean, every year, we keep adding and we get bigger and bigger and bigger things keep happening. As we continue to grow and as the viewership increases, we keep passing tests. We started off ESPN3, we passed that test for viewership. They put us on ESPN2, they gave us a Sunday, we passed that test. We broke records for that viewership time on a Sunday. They gave us a Saturday. Again, we passed that test. They said, we gave you a 2 o'clock, now we're going to give you a more prime time spot. So every time we pass that test, we get put in a better place to get more and more viewership, and it's kind of the snowball effect. And so I think last year we had 180,000 live viewers, household viewerships, which was huge. And as we can show those numbers, we're going to continue to get more and more sponsors. And so, we've got some big things in store for next year. Some announcements we're going to make actually pertaining to ESPN, and a couple big sponsors that we're going to announce. We're going to focus on the national championship right now. After the season, we have some pretty cool announcements that I'll be excited to share.
Awesome. Can't wait to talk to you in Canton, Ohio. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brian.
Now let's look at the Pro Division National Championship. In a rematch of the 2023 National Championship, the St. Louis Slam will play the Boston Renegades. Kickoff is set for 5 p.m. Eastern, live on ESPN2. Alex, last season, both of these teams came into the national championship with undefeated records. This year, Boston has 2 losses to the season, whereas St. Louis once again comes into Canton, Ohio without a blemish. Which team wins the national championship and adds an additional trophy to their case?
Well, for the first time, Brian, you and I have been calling that national championship game since Minnesota played Boston in 2022. And you've been calling games for much, much longer, since Cali played Boston, and you can go further back than that even. And I think that in terms of national championship games that we've seen in the WFA, this is probably the closest one that we've seen. We saw it a year ago, and it's a rematch of a championship game that for that first quarter, I remember it hit zeros, and we were in a scoreless game. And I looked at Donna Wilkinson, I looked at you, and I said, what did we just see? Because I don't think anybody aside from St. Louis or Boston. I don't even think Boston expected it. I don't think anybody aside from St. Louis expected a scoreless opening quarter. And I think that you look at this game here, the big thing, and we just shared the interview with Lisa King, the commissioner of the WFA. I think the big thing that Commissioner King is looking for here is parity. Because in years past, you think about the gap between the Boston Renegades, you think about the gap between, at times, the Cali War, Minnesota, St. Louis now. The gap between those top teams and everybody else has been so wide. We haven't seen that this year, where the parity has been so great, where we mentioned 2 weeks ago, I didn't know who was going to win Boston and Pittsburgh. But let's start with that matchup, because I said 2 weeks ago that depending on which Boston team we were going to see, the first half against Pittsburgh in the regular season matchup or the second half team would depend what would happen. We saw the second half Boston Renegades. It was not a particularly competitive matchup. I saw Pittsburgh make a lot of mistakes, and I saw Pittsburgh do things that they hadn't done in the regular season. And I think that that's a big way that Boston was able to surge and work their way through. The big question for Boston, again, has been the quarterback play. McFadden has been a work in progress to start the year, but her masterpiece was 2 weeks ago against Pittsburgh, where in the regular season matchup against the Passion, she looked unconfident, and it took a while for her to find her stride. She found her stride from the opening drive for the Boston Renegades. And if that's the case for Boston against St. Louis, I would say St. Louis should be nervous looking ahead. Because again, McFadden has had challenges with interceptions this season, challenges navigating the offense. Yes, Tuti Kuusinen has been a significant loss for the Boston Renegades running game. But when you get back late in the season, you get a full-strength Ruth Mata to complement Katie Falkowski, as has done in the past. You have to like what you see out of that Boston Renegades offense. And they've started to find their stride. A tough matchup against DC in the opening round, then a blowout on the road, no less, win at Pittsburgh. This is a Boston Renegades team that for the first time in years, they have had to deal with adversity. No, not, well, we didn't score 3 touchdowns in a quarter adversity. That's not adversity. This is a team that for the first time in years had to look themselves in the mirror and say, what can we do to be better? Because finally, Boston was not able to just be the best. They weren't just surging past everybody. They weren't going out and blowing teams out left and right. It's not that just teams came close to them. They lost twice. And now they have an opportunity here where they get to try to avenge the second of those losses here against the St. Louis Slam. But that being said, this is a very interesting matchup too for St. Louis, because when you think about what St. Louis has done, they really took a while for their offense to get going against Cali in the opening round. Then you had their game against Minnesota, where they really were the dominant course of play in that game, limiting the Minnesota Vixen to just a field goal in that contest, and the offense just surging through the rest of that game, and the defense being the star of the show as well for St. Louis. I think that, again, is the hallmark of the St. Louis Slam. Yes, we talk about their offense. Yes, we talk about what Jamie Gall has done passing the ball as MVP a season ago. We talked about how great Jada Humphrey has been in the running back core. We talk about friend of the program, Taylor Hay, who came back and kicked extra points against Minnesota 2 weeks ago. The focus is normally on the offense for St. Louis, but it also has to be on the defense. Because when we were on ESPN2 a year ago, Brian, you, me, and Donna Wilkinson, we talked about how deep the St. Louis Slam defense was, where they don't give up a lot of points. Now, if we take this matchup and we look back to the game that they played back on earlier on in this regular season, and it was a game that the scoreline favored St. Louis, but this was a pound-for-pound, punch-for-punch kind of game, where the two teams traded blows. It took St. Louis getting a defensive stop to really separate, because it had that feeling of a game of whoever scored last was going to be the team that won. And so when you look at this game in the season finale here in 2024 in Canton, Ohio, the question becomes who scores last, because that may be, again, the deciding factor in this contest. Is it the St. Louis Slam winning as the home team in this matchup, or is it the Boston Renegades again proving that while this may have been the first time that they've had to handle adversity in years, finally they can prove that we're not just a front runner, we're a team that can handle the pressure and we can deliver on it. That's my question heading into Saturday on ESPN2.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Terry Lister is back this week, hopefully with a little bit of a better prediction, as he makes his prediction for the Pro Division National Championship game.
Terry Lister here, bringing you my WFA Pro Division National Championship prediction. If you had asked me a few weeks ago how I think this game would go, I would have picked St. Louis by a touchdown or two over Boston or Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, my opinion has changed after Boston handled Pittsburgh 41-0 in Pittsburgh the previous game. That kind of changes things. So for the first time, Boston looked like old Boston, and that's not good news for St. Louis. So my updated prediction, unfortunately, is 35-21 Boston, and I hope I'm wrong. St. Louis definitely can win, but Boston looks like old Boston. That's going to be tough to deal with. Good luck to both teams. Thanks for listening.
We have already gotten some great ideas sent to us on ways to improve the show for next season. More interviews with the coaches and players, connecting with the media outlets throughout the country on what teams they cover, and also some segments on what the players and coaches do behind the scenes, whether it's volunteering or activism. Keep these ideas coming to Alex and I at roadtocantonshow@gmail.com. Over the past 4 seasons, we have given you 44 episodes, including this one, looking at everything from the Pro Division games to the All-American games, interviews with coaches, players. Don't forget Lois Cook and all her segments and crazy wackiness week in and week out. Next year, our name will change, but not our dedication, as we will continue to expand on our coverage of the WFA. For Lois Cook and Alex Westhead, I'm Brian Sweeney, and thank you for watching The Road to Canton.
Thank you for watching the preceding presentation from the Women's Football Alliance.